Hi there. So in this video, I want to build off of something I was talking about in a recent video about why it's important to build your internal emotional intelligence toolkit. Emotional regulation toolkit, I think is what I would call mine. I was asked recently a couple times by people who don't know me super well, what do you do for fun? What are your hobbies, right? And it's hard for me to answer that question, and I'm reflecting on why. I don't have a lot of hobbies that I do consistently. Like, skateboarding or, skiing, I guess, is one that's popular where I'm from. Making the same kind of art, right? Maybe someone could be into pottery, someone could be into pickleball or rock climbing or basketball, things like that. I don't really have a whole lot of consistent ones like that. And instead, what I do as a hobby is pursue experiences that make me feel fearful or uncomfortable and then do them and come out the other side. When I phrase it like that, it kind of sounds like a little bit of an adrenaline junkie type vibe, right? Like it's kind of similar if somebody said, I skydive or I throw myself into uncomfortable social situations, right? Like a lot of people would take the skydiving. And I don't necessarily view myself as an adrenaline junkie, but that's something that I like doing. And I got feedback, in one of the videos on this channel earlier, I posted, actually my first video on this channel, I posted a video when I was preparing for an improv comedy show, my first time ever doing that. And I was actively in a state of fear. And I was showing how I use my emotional regulation toolkit to feel a little bit better, to feel more comfortable, and to have a relationship with that fear so that it doesn't consume me, it doesn't drive me to cope in unhealthy ways, it doesn't influence my behavior. And as a result, I believe that that makes my life better. So, update on that, I did the improv comedy set. It was 15 minutes. I thought it was going to be longer, but it was 15 minutes. Going up there, some of the things I said got some laughs. Some of the things fell straight on their face like crickets out there. And by the time we kind of got going, I felt like I was a little bit in the flow of it. It was scary. It was. I was up there, making some choice that, I thought was funny or that I was trying to be funny. And, a room full of people were there kind of waiting to either laugh or cringe or, judge me in some way, right? And it felt like that was happening. And it also felt like I didn't care because I knew I had my own back and I knew that I had already committed to treating myself kindly and giving myself the benefit of the doubt and respecting myself and not cringing and judging myself. So again, it kind of felt like I had that shield up where it was like, oh, I don't really care what these people think. And even if it objectively wasn't a great performance, I still went away from that with positive self-talk and was happy that, relieved that it was over, of course, but happy I did it and really proud of myself. That's the kind of internal dialogue you can get when you work on improving your emotional regulation toolkit, if that sounds good to you, if that's an argument enough for you to try it. So related to the improv show, I was having a conversation with a loved one and they told me, I could not do that. Like, you are so courageous. You go up there and you do these things. This person in particular was talking about like joining classes and doing things alone, which is something that a lot of people struggle with and something that I used to struggle with. as well. And so I've been kind of reflecting, and that was a nice compliment. It was nice to kind of be recognized and feel seen for something that, something that I was working really hard on. So that was great. But I've been reflecting on this person's kind of point of view, right? Like, kind of the energy was like, you're courageous for doing things on your own and doing things that are scary. And like, I could never do that, right? Like, oh, I would need a friend to go with me. I would sign up and then I wouldn't show up. Like, they didn't say this, but I'm like, these are things I've heard from other people in a similar mindset, right? And what I wanted to reflect on here is that when we talk about doing something scary or something new or something that, is a little risky, you're sticking your neck out there, especially in kind of a social context. Let's picture going to a workout class by yourself, going to a dance class by yourself, going to maybe a comedy class, a performance by yourself, something you haven't done before. Maybe you're showing up to play pickup basketball or pickleball with a group of strangers and you don't really know how it works, right? Those are all things that are socially scary for many people, right? I mean, they say the fear of public speaking is more common or more strong than the fear of death. If you ask people who knows how true that is, right? But that just kind of goes to show, if that is true, that public speaking is a great example. This is something that is really a social fear. It's social anxiety. So what I was reflecting on, and the point I want to make is, you are not scared of the thing or even the outcome of the thing. You're scared of what you're going to feel. You're scared of the internal experience that you are anticipating if the thing goes bad. I have read books and had my life changed by books that introduced me to the perspective that every experience you have in life is an internal experience. And therefore, everything that you want is a positive, is a pleasurable, is a desirable internal experience. When you say, oh, I would love to have that car, what you really want is you want how you think that car will make you feel. If that makes sense. I can give another example. Someone who has a big crush on someone is kind of a common one, right? Like, oh, if I was with her, then like everything would be great, right? And a lot of times you'll get into a relationship with that person and it's not great, right? It's like, and it wasn't ever the thing. It was the fantasy you had of how being with this person would make you feel. And so that's an example that, like, if you look at what people want, if you ask someone, what do you want? Like, what's something that you want for yourself this year? A lot of the times, if they answer with an external thing, you can always go one step further and ask, if you got that thing, how do you think it would make you feel? Sometimes people answer that question and say, I want more inner peace. I want to be less stressed, right? Those are already internal things. Those are emotion related. But if someone says, I want to get a promotion at work, interesting. Why, right? What do you think will be the internal experience associated with that? Because it could be anything. It could be a sense of accomplishment. It could be that you feel more secure, job security. You feel, like you have more freedom because the promotion comes with more PTO days, or like there's all these different internal experiences. The internal is what we want to focus on because every experience is ultimately internal. Now, those were the positives. Those were the desires, the wants. Fear, especially in this kind of social setting where there's not really actual danger, right? If you're scared, like, because you're about to bungee jump, there is some actual danger there and your body is like, the survival mechanism is kicking in. Like, this could actually kill me. With social stuff though, what I want to submit or suggest is that when people have social anxiety, they're not afraid of the thing. Once again, they're afraid of the internal experience of what might happen, right? So if I go up and speak in front of the class and I mess up, I am anticipating that the voice in my head will be really mean, right? And will make me feel small, feel pathetic, feel like a failure, feel shame, feel maybe guilt, probably in this case more shame, right? These are experiences, internal experiences, that are not generally pleasurable and not generally what we want. And so we avoid the external thing that might cause shame, feeling small, feeling insignificant, embarrassment, humiliation. Those are big ones that I've had to deal with. I noticed in my life that I had behaviors of avoiding certain things and saying, oh, I don't like doing that thing. But really I was avoiding it because I knew that if it went a certain way, I would feel the scary feeling, right? I still don't dance much, and I would like to dance more because it's such a human thing and it's so joyful, it can be so joyful. For most of my life, I did not dance at all, ever. Could be at a wedding, it could be in a room with my family, my closest friends, and I would not dance because I had a voice in my head saying, if you mess up, people are gonna make fun of you, it's gonna be humiliating, you're not a good dancer, and if people find that out, it's gonna feel bad. And I didn't know exactly why, I didn't really have the emotional vocabulary at the time, but I was just like, I'm avoiding this thing because it might go in a way that will feel bad. And this is not dissimilar from what my loved one was talking about with, I don't want to do things on my own. I don't want to sign up for a class or play sports or maybe ask someone out because there might be a situation that happens where it feels bad, okay? So ultimately, a lot of our behaviors, especially when we're pushing stuff away, we're saying, I'm not gonna do that, I don't like that, I'm scared of that, I'm not someone who does that. My suggestion is that all of those things are a strategy for us to avoid the internal experience that is unpleasant. Again, that could be, I already listed what those things could be, shame, etc. So this is the good news, and this is why it's important. We have control over our internal experiences. Let me say that a different way. We have control over how we respond to our internal experiences and how we relate with them. So, a perfect example is the first video on this channel that I made where I was saying, hey, I'm experiencing fear in my body. I can't do anything about that. As much as I want to shut it off, pick up my phone, numb it out, distract myself, go talk to a friend about it and vent and doom scroll. What's the word for when you think of ruminate, when you think of all the things that could go wrong? As much as I want to do all that, those are choices, right? Feeling fear is not a choice. That's an evolutionary biological process that has evolved to help us survive. And but how we mentally respond to that experience is in our control. So when we feel shame, we can just sit there and be like, oh, this sucks. Oh, I feel so shame. Oh, I'm not good enough. Everyone's right about me. I'll never be loved. Something about me is broken, right? Like that. Or we can make the conscious choice to say, I'm going to relate to myself in a different way. Shame is not the best example. It is a great example here. I don't have a great, strong shame toolkit personally. Grief. Grief is one that I know really well. A lot of my life was lived in a way that I was trying to avoid losing something important. And I would never go for the win because I was scared of what if I get the win and then lose it. Like I was like, that, I know that there will be a lot of grief there and I will experience that grief and I don't know what to do. I don't have a grief, plan in my toolkit, right? But once I built one, and I talked about this in another video, once I built the grief toolkit, I started seeing potential grief as not a threat anymore, right? Same way that I started seeing potential fear as not a threat anymore, because now I know how to deal with fear. I know how to deal with grief. I could probably learn more about how to deal with shame. These are the things we spend our entire life avoiding, and we live small and we don't dance in the rain, right? Like dancing in the rain one time could be the defining experience of your entire life, right? It's so human, it's so beautiful, it's so joyful. It's the expression of joy. It's a miracle that we get to experience this life and experience consciousness and get to have a body that is able to dance and be on a planet where there's breathable air and drinkable water falling from the sky. Like, that's a miracle. And we aren't dancing in the rain because we have not built the toolkit to deal with what if I slip and fall, and that would be so scary, that would be awful. And it is scary and it is awful until you learn to deal with those things internally. Then life expands so much, and the possibilities and the beauty of life can expand so much. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, right? That's why I'm making these videos at freaking 11 p.m. at night when I should be sleeping, right? This is what I'm passionate about. I'm like, this is what makes a fulfilling and stellar and resonant life full of these experiences. Is we, and I'm inviting you, have the opportunity to learn how to deal with the internal experiences that we are avoiding, the unpleasant ones, in order to free ourselves up for the rest of our lives from being held back from the fear and avoidance of these experiences. My loved one, if that emotional work was done, and maybe easier said than done. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is something that is available freely to anybody, and is ultimately a choice whether you want to do it or not. My loved one could have a whole new, life worth of experiences alone, doing things alone, trying things, solo travel, right? Like that's something that can be so fulfilling potentially, that is like completely off the table for this person. And who knows, like maybe that becomes their passion in life. Maybe that defines their life, those experiences, trying new things solo. And currently those are just completely off the table because, in my opinion, that emotional regulation toolbox is not robust enough to deal with this situation. And so when someone asks me, what do I do for fun? Like the honest answer is, I like to build my emotional regulation toolbox by learning new skills that I can use and then putting them into use in kind of scary or unconventional situations. That's what I like to do, okay? And it has a huge return on investment for me because now I'm doing stuff every day or every week that used to, make my body shake with fear, right? Like it's a complete 180. And I feel like I'm opening all these doors and doing all these things, talking to all these people. And I'm like, a fraction of where I want to be and where I know I will be in the future, but these are the kinds of things that I think are extremely important for someone who is really serious about living a fulfilling life, or someone who's even interested in living a life that feels fully resonant, right? I think about, there's a list out there of like the top regrets of dying people, right? They've talked to people who are on their deathbed, and so like, I don't remember the entire list off my head, but some of them were like, I wish I would have had the courage to be myself. I wish I would have, invested more in relationships. One is like, I wish I wouldn't have taken the safe path, right? Like those types of things. I wish I had the whole list. You can look them up. But look for the ones that are like, you can tell this person would have been able to live more in alignment if they weren't just avoiding negative emotion. A lot of people are born, live up, I was gonna say 100, 90, 80, 70 years, so much time, and they die and they say, oh, I wish I would have done things differently, right? I wish I would have lived a life that I wanted instead of a life where I was just avoiding things that could have hypothetically been bad or could have hypothetically felt bad. Like, we have the opportunity now up front to I think of it as preparedness. This video is getting long, right? I understand that. Noah Kahan, one of my favorite songwriters, has this idea of building a boat. He mentions it in his song Forever and also in his song Northern Attitude. And he talks about building a boat in a way that to me represents building a skill set that will help you be prepared for when disaster strikes, right? So the analogy here is like, you could spend your whole life worrying about a hurricane coming, right? And if you do nothing but worry, when the hurricane does come, you will get swept away. Like you have no defense against this thing. And that's what we do when we worry about something that could cause grief, something that could cause shame, something that could make you feel humiliated, right? We spend so much time worrying about these things. And when it finally happens, we're defenseless. When it finally happens, we're defenseless. And it's like, oh, my worst fear came true. Now, picture when you are afraid of something happening, like a hurricane, you build a boat. You prepare yourself, right? You have to look at the thing that you're scared of and think, if this happened, if this hurricane, in real life or emotionally in your head, if this hurricane happened, what do I wish that I had? What would help me? If it's a physical hurricane, a boat would be helpful. So I'm going to build a boat. I'm going to become prepared, right? If you're afraid of this emotional hurricane, build your boat. Become prepared. Get acquainted with the essence of these things. What's the essence of the shared human experience? Every human has experienced shame, guilt, right? We've already talked about the other ones. Anger, fear, anxiety. What's really going on there? What is it? Just, if you look at it, and you can do this. This is a choice. This is free. There's no excuses. It's going to be hard, right? It's going to take some courage. But it's so worth it. It's so worth it, I assure you. To have a boat, because stuff's going to happen. Bad stuff's going to happen. You're going to lose. Someone's going to pass away, right? There's going to be tragedy. That's the life we live in, right? And it sucks. This is something I talked about in my last video. We cannot guarantee the future. We can't have certainty that everything's going to be okay externally. But if we prepare emotionally, we can have certainty that everything will be okay internally. And every experience is ultimately an internal experience. So if you can invest a little bit upfront in building your internal toolkit, then when that stuff happens, you'll feel like I did on the improv stage, with a shield, protected, safe, secure, with me, loved, right? Everything else doesn't matter. And I'm sure there's situations, maybe people are saying, well, what about this, what about this? But I'm saying generally, for the most part, this is a good idea, okay? I believe in this idea. I'm committed to helping others do the things that I've done, and I'm committed to continuing to do this thing, which is build my emotional intelligence, my emotional regulation toolbox. It has helped me tremendously. It will help you tremendously, and I implore you to give it a shot. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I will talk to you later.